Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition. I am Matt Connarton. That's why they picked me to do the show. Just kidding. Anyway, well, no, I'm not kidding. I really am Matt Connarton, but so welcome everyone. Hey, before we get into the show, want to remind you, I've got a big event coming up this weekend. So if you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area, it'll be worth the drive, I promise. On Saturday, I will be at the Healing Tree Wellness Center and Spa in Londonderry, New Hampshire. I'll be doing a 2-hour workshop on hypnosis and meditation. For those of you who don't know, I am a certified hypnotherapist. That's a big part of how I make my living. And if you're new to the show and you don't know this about me, or if you're new enough where, you know, you've seen the show, but you haven't heard me mention this, and if it seems surprising to you that someone who sits here and yells into the microphone as I do would actually be good at hypnotizing people, I can also be quite relaxing and speak in a very soft tone and help guide you into a feeling of very deep relaxation where you will receive all the powerful and beneficial suggestions that I give you. Anyway, so that's my career, as it were. So Saturday, I will be doing a 2-hour workshop. You can come on in and I'll be discussing and doing presentations on hypnosis and meditation and how it can help you and benefit you. I'll be teaching self-hypnosis, and then we end it with a big group session with everybody where I hypnotize everybody all at once, and it's a lot of fun. And I haven't done one of these in a while, actually. I used to do them on a regular basis, and then I really shifted to just focusing on doing individual sessions. But when I started working at the Healing Tree Center, Patty Pingree, who I think is coming on later today on Norman Friends, either this week or next week, maybe it's today, she suggested, well, do you want to do one here now that you're working here? So I'm excited about it. So if you want to learn more about it and how you can get in on this, go to ipmnation.com/events, ipmnation.com/events, and you can click that on, and you can see how there's still room. There is limited space available, but there is still room for this event, so you can still get in on this. So that's going to be this Saturday from 1 to 3. Also, too, I want to say thank you to everybody who said some nice things on Facebook in regard to a post that I had made on Friday. I had a little bit of I'll just talk about this very briefly and then we'll get into the show, but I had a little bit of a health scare. Friday night, I was supposed to be on Shadows of the Night, which is... Actually, it's currently the #1 show on ipmnation.com, and it's our Friday night show. And I'm usually on the show. Chris Loveday is the host, and I'm I'm the executive producer of the show, but I'm usually also there in the studio. And last Friday night, I was going to do some hypnosis on Shadows of the Night. I never made it to the show. Long story very short, because people have been asking me what happened, what's going on, etc. Here's what's up. So on Thursday of last week, I began to experience chest pain. It was not consistent. It wasn't particularly severe. It was relatively mild. It would come and go. I noticed it in the morning and when I got up. And it would last for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then it would go away. Wouldn't feel it again for 2 or 3 hours, then it would come back, last for a little bit, go away again. And when it first happened, I just kind of ignored it as much as I could, but it then continued into Friday. Now, I've gone to the emergency room twice before in my adult life with chest pain. And in both instances, it turned out to be pleurisy the first 2 times this happened. And if you don't know what pleurisy is a viral infection where your lung tissue becomes inflamed. And it's actually generally not a big deal. Apparently, in some instances, it can evolve into more severe conditions like pneumonia and other things. But generally, pleurisy is no big deal medically. It feels like a big deal when it's happening to you because, anyone who's ever had it knows when it first comes on, when that lung tissue becomes inflamed, it is extremely painful. It feels like you're being stabbed in the chest. So the first time this happened to me, I was quite alarmed. And I was only 24, 25 years old. So I remember at the time rushing to the emergency room thinking, well, it can't be my heart. I'm young, I'm healthy, but why does it feel like I'm being stabbed in the chest? So, so I went and they did the EKG and everything, and they determined it was pleurisy. So, and at least in the 2 cases that I went to the emergency room and it turned out to be pleurisy, they don't even, again, it's a minor thing. It feels like a big deal when it's happening, but, they didn't even put me on any antibiotics or anything. Like I said, the doctor said it's like having a cold in your chest. It's a virus. It runs its course and it goes away on its own, and that's it. In the meantime, take ibuprofen to deal with the pain. And then sure enough, in a few days, it really only lasts a few days, or at least in my case, and then it would go away. So on Thursday, when I started experiencing this chest pain, I thought, okay, I must have pleurisy again. I've had it twice before. Obviously, I'm susceptible to it, and it's fairly common. But then when Friday rolled around and this was still going on, I finally had to kind of be honest with myself and confront the fact that this feels different than the other 2 times. So for one thing, this was kind of a dull ache that would come and go. The pleurisy was a sharp pain that was fairly consistent. So I went to the walk-in clinic which is in Concord where I live. It's not that far from where I live. It was closer than the hospital. So I went to the walk-in clinic. They did an EKG. EKG looked fine. Doctor said, as far as I can tell just from this, it's not your heart, but this is a little worrisome still because it's also not pleurisy. And he determined it wasn't pleurisy because when I would take a very deep breath, the pain did not intensify. In fact, I wasn't even feeling the pain while I was at the walk-in clinic. It was there was no pain there because, like I said, it would come and go. And it figures while I'm there, there's no pain, right? I'm like the car that is making a funny noise, so you take it to the mechanic, but then when the mechanic looks at it, drives it or whatever, there's no noise. So the mechanic can't figure out what it is. So he said, I don't know what's going on, but we need to do further testing. So we're going to send you up to the emergency room at Concord Hospital, and they can do further testing there. And he said, do you feel all right to drive there yourself? And I said, yeah. I said, right now I'm not experiencing any symptoms, and, I feel all right. So I drove up to the ER, and they insisted on doing a second EKG so they could compare them. The walk-in, of course, faxed all my information up, but and that was fine. So then they took x-rays of my chest, and they also drew blood to, they do a blood test in these instances, and that all came back fine. The x-rays looked great. The blood test didn't show any, I don't know how you pronounce it or if I'm saying it right, troponin. I guess troponin is if you're not supposed to have any of it in your blood. Your body only makes this chemical in response to damage to the heart. So if you have troponin in your blood, that's an indication that you've either had a heart attack or you're in the danger zone and you probably got one coming. I had no troponin in my blood. So at that point, the doctor said, well, we have a couple options. We can hospitalize you tonight, just in case, to be on the safe side. Everything looks great so far, but we still can't rule out that it's your heart. So I'd like to hospitalize you, and we'll do a stress test in the morning. So this way we can keep an eye on things overnight, or we'll let you go and you can do the stress test next week. We'll schedule it for next week. And I said, I'd prefer option 2. I told her, I said, knock on wood, I've always been a pretty healthy guy. I've never been hospitalized overnight for anything, and I'd kind of like to keep that streak going. So she said, okay, well, here's the thing. It's up to you, obviously, but I strongly recommend the first option. I would feel much better about the first option. It would be much safer. We can't 100% at this point rule out that it's your heart. And if you go home and something happens to you and you have to call 911, there's no guarantee that you're going to get back here in time, and you could die. And I said, well, I'm going to go home. every instinct I had, and some people might critique this and suggest that that was a foolish decision, but too risky. But every instinct I had was telling me, it's okay. Just go home. You don't want to be here. I really, really, really dread spending the night in the hospital. So I think, obviously if she had told me, look, there's a 50-50 chance you're going to drop dead if you leave here, then yeah, I would have stayed. But whereas it was like, okay, at this point we think it's a very small chance that this is your heart, but there's still a chance. I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'll go home. So I did. Next day I felt a little bit better. Next day after that I felt a little bit better. At this point I don't have any symptoms. The symptoms have completely faded away, really. Except for when I wake up in the morning, I think I feel a little tightness there, but then as soon as I get up and I'm moving around, it's gone. So hopefully it's something other than my heart. There's a million other things that can cause the symptoms that I was experiencing. It just so happens, though, that the most common thing is also the most deadly. And that's why I decided not to be a tough guy about it and go to the hospital. Some people try to be tough about it and put off going to the hospital when they have chest pain. And chest pain is the one thing you don't want to mess with. My father, back in August, it was his birthday. He had just turned 66, which coincidentally also happens to be the average age, I think, for males in the United States to have a heart attack. He had a heart attack on his birthday. I was mad at him when he told me this. He confessed to me when he was in the hospital, he had had chest pain for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And he just kind of was like, told himself it's probably just stress or whatever. And then finally, on his birthday, it got really bad. It just intensified and he couldn't breathe. And that's when he finally went to the hospital. We have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, man, this is Norm. Hey, you look a little green around the gills here in your hands. Look a little pinkish and green there. I don't know.
Pinkish and green?
I'm a little concerned.
Well, Norm, as I've, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show, but I am a reptilian shapeshifter. And I'm in mid.
That's okay.
I'm in mid shift right now.
Know that one. So you're feeling better though?
Oh yeah. I feel fine right now. I have a stress test scheduled for Friday, and if that goes well at that point, we can pretty comfortably say it's probably what was happening to me. The symptoms I had probably had nothing to do with my heart. And I'm optimistic about the stress test. So
it's still related, even if it's stress related.
Yeah.
Because we got Patty Piggery coming on today.
She is coming on today. Excellent. Good. Well, I look forward to that.
But I also will tell you, just be careful that greenish look I see around you. Oh, by the way, how long did it take you to get a lawnmower to shave your chest?
The very pretty nurse who had to shave me, I did apologize to her. I said, I'm sorry, I'm such an ape. But when I made the comment in my Facebook post that it was already growing back, I wasn't kidding. Like, it grew back really fast.
Well, it's going to start itchy, too.
You know what? It grew back so fast, it didn't even itch.
Wow. See, that's part of your reptilian, there.
I think so. I think that is part of it, yeah.
Okay. I'll see you at 4.
All right, thanks, Norm. I'll see you then. All right, so that was, of course, Norm Moody from Norm and Friends, and we're on later at from 4 to 6 today here at MPTS. So I have the stress test Friday. I'm optimistic about it. I do a lot of cardio. I run. If it's a nice day, if it's not a nice day, I go to the gym, hop on the treadmill, and I've never, during the course of any cardiovascular exertion, I've never either during or after had any symptoms of anything, no chest pain, no dizziness or shortness of breath or anything. So I'm optimistic that'll go fine. And at that point, it's probably we can fairly safely, at least from what was explained to me, we can kind of rule out at that point that it was my heart. But yeah, my dad had chest pain for 6 weeks before he went to the hospital. So that's what I was thinking about on Friday when I made the decision. I think I better go get looked at. I once heard a cardiac, and I'll finish with this, and then we'll get to some issues. I once heard a cardiac doctor lament that for far too many people, the first symptom of any sort of heart trouble is sudden death. So I didn't want that to be me. And by the way, if I didn't say it, just so you know, my dad's okay. He survived and he made a full recovery. They had to put a stent into his heart. So he's all right. But on his freaking birthday, it happened. But it could have been avoided. You know, like I said, he tried to be tough about it. Oh, it's just stress, or maybe I have a cold in my chest or something. No, it was his heart. So, and before we get into some topics, because I know that was just riveting for everyone. No, but sincerely, I do want to thank everyone who said nice things on Facebook. And the initial post that I made on Facebook, by the way, was complimenting the staff at the walk-in clinic and at Concord Hospital itself. Everybody was phenomenal. And as I said in the post, you know, you hear a lot of good stories, but you also hear a lot of horror stories about the medical profession, people going to the emergency room and practically bleeding to death while they're waiting to get in and whatnot. You know, we've all heard some bad things over the years. But everybody I dealt with on that day was absolutely phenomenal. And I don't usually post personal things on Facebook. I usually just stick to things about the shows that I do and about IPM Nation or events or whatever. But I was so impressed and happy and grateful to everyone that I dealt with that day, that I really felt compelled to say something and post something positive about that and kind of give them all a shout out, because I got to tell you, honestly, I've never felt so vulnerable as when I was lying on that hospital bed wondering what was going on, if it was my heart, if I was gonna, not to be dramatic about it, but it was the first time in my life where I ever really felt like I was staring my own mortality in the face. And to feel so vulnerable and yet at the same time also have people around me who were professional and clearly very competent, knew what they were doing, and who were very warm and friendly and accommodating and optimistic and encouraging and all of that. That was when I felt like I was at my most vulnerable. To have that also was wonderful, and just really, I'm just very grateful. So I wanted to give them big positive energy and shout out for Concord Hospital. They were great. And I even told that to the doctor when she was saying, look, I really encourage you to stay overnight. I said, don't take this personally, because you guys are great. And that's got nothing to do with my not wanting to stay here. I just really didn't want to stay in the hospital. You know, you hear this stuff like people get hospitalized and they end up with staph infections and stuff. And it's a breeding ground for illness. Yeah, I realize if you're going to have a heart attack, that's the one place you really want to do it. But like I said, I was pretty sure I was not going to have a heart attack. So anyway, so we'll get to some stuff. I want to remind you too, though, if you want to participate, if you're watching live, or even if you're just watching one of the replays, but you still want to interact with other viewers or listeners. And I always say listeners because there's also a radio version of the show, Thursday nights at 9 p.m. on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network. We do have an active chat room. It's always active, so you can use it during the live show or one of the replays if you go to ipmnation.com/MCUTV. And you might already be there watching that now. I know a lot of folks watch it on the website. So ipmnation.com/MCUTV. And of course, we also have the Facebook page, which I also try to keep an eye on during the live show. If you haven't liked it yet, please do so. Matt Connarton Unleashed on Facebook. And we'll get into some stuff. And if you're watching us live, of course, the phone number's on the screen. I'm going to do a Rubio here and take a gulp of water before I get into this. Because when I scheduled my appointment for the stress test, the nurse did tell me stay hydrated. I think they just say that to everyone, though. People generally don't drink enough water. I drink ridiculous amounts of water. Sometimes I have a big gallon. This is something I've been wanting to get to for a few weeks, and this is going to make some people very angry with me. This is a divisive issue. particularly around here. Here at MPTS, on various programs, some of which I participate in, some of which I don't, this issue comes up. And also, too, I see a lot of Facebook stuff about it. Phil Griazzo posted something a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, on Facebook that really bothered me. And this is not in any way to to attack Phil or Phil is a great guy, and I consider him a friend. I mean, it's not like we hang out or anything, but I know him well enough. I consider him a friend, and I like and respect him very much. And we agree on some things politically, and we disagree on some things politically. He's been a guest on this show multiple times. And he even guest hosted once back in October. There was a week that I had to go out of town, and Phil sat in for me. So I just want to say that up front before I get to what he posted that I really had a problem with. This isn't meant as an attack, but I do want to. I do have some constructive criticism. Let's put it that way for something. And some of the comments I saw just drove me nuts. Here's what, and I didn't comment on it myself. Sometimes people ask me, Matt, you're such a political junkie and you're involved in all this politically driven programming. How come you don't post a lot of political stuff on Facebook or do a lot of political tweeting or anything? And the reason I don't is I used to. But from my vantage point, it's really, really difficult to have a constructive, respectful political dialogue on Facebook. Because once you start any kind of dialogue on Facebook like that, it very, very rapidly descends into people who disagree doing a lot of name calling and personal insults, and it's so obnoxious and immature. What happens, some of the dialogue. I'm not saying that posting political things on Facebook is obnoxious and immature. I don't want to be misunderstood. Everybody has a right to post whatever they want to on Facebook, and I would encourage that. But some of the, again, somebody posts something political, and then the comments just get nasty and childish and insulting, and it's like, why bother? I find it discouraging. So I prefer to express myself politically on the air, and I always encourage people to call and interact via phone or text or Facebook or the chat room. And I enjoy having a constructive political dialogue with people, and I love talking to people I disagree with, and I love that exchange of ideas and that intellectual exchange. But on Facebook, I gave up. It's impossible. You'll get a few. You'll get somewhat of a constructive dialogue initially. The pattern generally is at first you'll see a constructive, intelligent back and forth, and then usually by the fifth or sixth person entering the dialogue, it descends into just people hurling insults at each other like children on a schoolyard. So I did not respond to Phil's post as much as I was tempted to. But I am going to respond to it here, and here's what it was. So Phil's a Republican, kind of a libertarian-style Republican, kind of, in my estimation of him politically. And like I said, we agree on some things and we disagree on others. Phil posted this thing. I think it was from somewhere in Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. He was sharing something that someone else had posted. It was a store owner, or the management of a store, I think it was a convenience store, had taped a sign in their window that said something to the effect of, this store no longer accepts EBT cards. If you have an EBT card, go get a job. Or something to that effect. And I had a real problem with that. And my problem with that is this. There is a and I've talked about this on the show. I haven't talked about this post and this issue specifically, but the modern Republican Party, and for those of you who are new to the show, by the way, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent, and I tend to be very centrist in my views, and I'm very critical of both parties. But one of the things that drives me nuts about the modern Republican Party is this constant strategy of demonizing poor people. I understand why they do it, because I think that whether it's consciously or sort of subconsciously in some cases, because some of the people who engage in this, I don't know if they think about it this deeply or not, but I understand why they do it, because I think politically they've made a calculation that the benefit to demonizing the poor outweighs the negatives. The negative of it, of course, is that people like me who are independents, it from my vantage point, it reinforces the image of Republicans or many Republicans, not all Republicans certainly, but a lot of the conservative base and a lot of the Tea Party folks and libertarians too. It reinforces this idea that they're really kind of, there's a certain mean-spiritedness. Let me put it that way. There are many things about conservatism that I actually do agree with. I'm not as liberal as everyone thinks I am. There are some things about conservatism that I do agree with. In fact, on last week's show, I talked about a big thing that I agree with Republicans on. But there are also certain things about it that really turn me off. And I think that conservatism does carry with it a certain mean-spiritedness, a certain, antipathy would be the word, I guess. I don't want to say hatred, but an antipathy of poor people. And I think the political calculation that the modern Republican Party has made, because they've gotten very overt and very blatant with this stuff, is that the benefit outweighs the net loss, because it energizes the base of the party. Because conservatives love this kind of stuff. They do. Conservatives love demonizing poor people so much that, and I've brought this on up on the show before, but this is the best example that I can think of that really illustrates this drive that we have seen. We saw it in New Hampshire, and I think it kind of blew over, but this drive that we've seen in so many states to drug test welfare recipients. And the problem with drug testing welfare recipients is that in every state that it's been tried, it's been a miserable failure. It's blown up in their faces because the numbers of people who test positive, the numbers of welfare recipients who test positive for being on some sort of narcotic end up being so just infinitesimally low that they end up spending so much more money on the drug testing itself, because drug testing is very expensive, than they could ever possibly save on kicking drug users off the welfare rolls. So this program ends up costing way more money than it saves. And conservatives are supposed to be all about being fiscally conservative, being fiscally responsible, saving money. But here they come up with this program that actually costs more money than it saves, way more money than it saves. So it's government waste. This program is government waste. It grows the bureaucracy because you're adding on to bureaucracy to add this extra component to the welfare program, right? Republicans, conservatives, libertarians are all supposed to be anti-big government. So this program right off the bat violates what are supposed to be two key conservative Republican attitudes, right? Small government, no wasteful spending. But the idea of kicking welfare recipients when they're down, they love it so much that they keep pushing this idea in every state, including New Hampshire. I saw a Facebook post when this was coming down the pike in New Hampshire. People like Janine Nodder, for example, on Facebook. And I've met Janine and I like Janine. But all excited, all these conservatives, so excited about the possibility of drug testing welfare recipients in New Hampshire. And it's like, it's so important to them to kick poor people when they're down, that even though this program is going to waste a massive amount of money and it's going to expand the government, they're just so excited about it. But the base of the Republican Party loves that kind of stuff. So the calculation they've made is, if it energizes the base, it's worth alienating more, shall we say, compassionate Republicans who actually, give a crap about people. It's worth alienating independents like myself who are really turned off by this kind of stuff, and it keeps me from wanting to vote Republican. And it turns off any potential more moderate to conservative-minded Democrats who may be tempted to vote Republican. This is the political calculation that they've made. And this thing that Phil posted, again, it really just reinforces that whole thing. We really, as Republicans, we just hate the poor. It's not enough to simply not care about them, not want to help them, even though Republicans, while they're wrapping themselves in the flag, they're always clutching that Bible. And Christ was really into this idea of looking out for people, of caring for people, of taking care of each other. But conservatism says, no, don't do that. Oh, we're Christians, we love God, and we need prayer in school, and we really, ideally, we'd love to have a theocracy. Oh, but the whole caring about people thing, no, not so much, right? Here's the problem. The thing that Phil posted, and then of course there's all these posts saying, oh, great job, Phil, we're so glad you posted this. Oh, these poor people, these EBT card people, they're all losers and leeches and whatnot. I'm going to tell you all something who agree with that. This is a fact that you apparently are completely oblivious to. There is something in this country that is growing. There is a segment of this population that is growing in this crappy economy, this stagnant economy. Since the Great Recession, this problem has only grown. This segment of the population has just continued to grow. But I'm going to share a phrase with you people that apparently a lot of you have never heard. 2 words: working poor. Is that new to you, working poor? Do you know what that is? I'll tell you what that is. The working poor are people who are not losers, who are not leeches, who are not these bad Americans who sit on their couch all day eating potato chips while benefiting from some socialist program that supposedly pays them to be lazy and to be bad Americans and to leech off the government. No, the working poor are people who go out, they have jobs. Many of them have full-time jobs, and they have a family to support, and they have full-time jobs that don't pay them enough to actually feed their families, and that's why they get help. That's why they get help from the government with things like EBT cards. And this, by the way, is a very large percentage of people who receive EBT cards. So if you look at a sign on a storefront that says, we don't accept EBT cards here, so why don't you take your EBT card and go find a job? If you look at that and you love that and you think that's great, and you're looking at that and thinking, oh, it's about time somebody said something like that. It's about time somebody did that. It's about time somebody spoke up against all these losers and leeches and lazy people who just don't want to work and they want the government to take care of them. Well, you need to learn this phrase, working poor, because that's a real thing, okay? And that is real. That's not something that some liberal made up to excuse the government, or Uncle Sugar, as Huckabee calls it, taking care of everybody. It's a real thing. I dare you to look in the face of somebody who's busting their butt working a full-time job for minimum wage, because that's all they can find in this crappy economy, and they got a family at home to feed. Maybe they used to have a big job, a big important job, making big money, and then the Great Recession hit, and they got laid off. But they're not sitting home eating potato chips, living off the government. No, they're out there working. They took what they could get. They took a crappy, low-paying job just so they could continue to support their family, but it's not enough. It's not enough. That's what the whole minimum wage debate is about. And that's a separate issue because I have some mixed feelings about that. But a lot of people out there are working full-time, doing the best they can, and it's still not enough, and they're struggling. And they don't feel good about it. They're not getting those EBT cards and saying, yay, I'm getting help from the government. I figured out how to work the system. I'm gaming the system. Look at me. No. No, no, no. You actually talk to some people who are getting help from the government. You ask them how they really feel about it. The working poor, look it up. That is a very big chunk of who gets help from the government. And when I saw that post that Phil put up and all these comments, everybody's so impressed and it's about time somebody said that. It's so ignorant. It's ignorant and it's uncompassionate. And it disgusts me. I'm disgusted by it. I have this. This is from nclnet.org. This is anybody can find this information if you want to actually look into it and learn something about this. This is it goes through some of the mythology around food stamps, EBT cards, etc. Because, in the course of demonizing poor people, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got the classic I know a guy story. I know a guy who was doing this and this and figured out how to game the system and took advantage in this, right? And then, I think some of this is human nature. Somebody knows someone who did something, knows someone who managed to bilk the system, and then they assume, well, because there's fraud, waste, and abuse out there, that automatically means that everybody who's using this program, who's using the system this way, they're all doing it. They're all ripping us off. And it's such crap, Let's see. Let me read this to you. The Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP as it's known for short, formerly known as food stamps, is a federal aid program administered by the USDA that is up for renewal in the massive Farm Bill. Despite serving nearly 1 in 7 Americans, SNAP is widely misunderstood with countless mischaracterizations about the program. We'll help separate fact from fiction. SNAP provides low-income individuals, yes, low-income individuals. To have income, you're working, right? That implies you're working, but your income is low and you need a little extra help. Sorry, I digress, as I often do. SNAP provides I'll tell you, if my heart really is the problem, I don't know if I'm going to get through the show. SNAP provides low-income individuals, senior citizens, and the disabled with financial assistance to purchase food. Due to its nature, SNAP acts not only to reduce hunger and improve nutrient, but also to alleviate poverty across the United States. In 2012, SNAP provided nearly $81 billion in food assistance to 46.7 million Americans. Over the past month, Congress has been working to reauthorize the Farm Bill. This was obviously written a while ago, but like I said, I wanted to get to this sooner, which funds and sets the country's food and agricultural policy every 5 years. Both the Senate and House had planned to make significant cuts to SNAP, which accounts for approximately 76% of the Farm Bill's budget. The Senate proposed and passed a bill which would make cuts of $4.1 billion in SNAP funding over the next 10 years, meaning an estimated 500,000 families will lose $90 per month in benefits. The House failed to pass a bill that would make even more aggressive cuts, reducing SNAP funding by $20 billion over the next 10 years, cuts that would impact 2 million people. But that is not the only debate surrounding the Farm Bill. Despite serving nearly 1 in 7 Americans, SNAP is widely misunderstood with countless mischaracterizations about the program. So let's go through some of this. Myth number 1, SNAP recipients are welfare queens. By the way, that was a phrase that we started to hear in the 1980s. Reagan worked that into one of his speeches, and that kind of became almost a buzzword or term, the welfare queens. Reality number 1, SNAP primarily provides assistance to the working poor. For all those of you who love to demonize these people, I'm going to read that sentence again. Slowly. SNAP primarily, that means most of the people who are benefiting from this, SNAP primarily provides assistance to the working poor, not sitting on the couch watching TV all day, leeching off the government poor, working poor, as in people who actually go out into the world and make an effort to provide for their families. Working poor. According to research, I'm sorry I'm belaboring that, but I know a lot of conservatives have apparently never heard that phrase in their lives. According to research by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, 4 out of 5 SNAP beneficiaries are either working, many of which are in the military, or individuals who cannot be expected to work, such as children, the elderly, or the disabled. Oh my God! So we're actually using this program to help feed people who are in the military? What are those deadbeats doing in the military? Defending our country. They should go get real jobs. Children? This thing helps children? Pfft. I think those children should learn to fend for themselves, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. The elderly? Screw them, right? By the way, people of the political persuasion who hate this kind of program, they love the elderly when they're all concerned about these alleged death panels of Obamacare, right? But when it comes to something that helps them eat, screw them. And the disabled. Yeah. No, we can't afford to help anybody. Screw them. We'll move on, shall we? Myth number 2. SNAP is rife with fraud and abuse. Well, I referred to this earlier, right? Everybody's got a story, you know? Oh, I was at the store the other day and I saw somebody use their EBT card to buy, 5 pounds of cocaine, and then I watched them go hop in their Lamborghini, and I was so infuriated I followed them home, and it turns out they live in this giant mansion with an Olympic-sized pool, and they're probably an illegal immigrant, and they bought all that stuff with their EBT card. That's my tax dollars. Everybody's got a story. Reality number 2. SNAP is a well-run and efficient federal program. Or probably as efficient as the government is capable of doing anything. I am a bit conservative in that regard. I'm skeptical of any government program being efficient and well-run necessarily, but obviously it works to some effect because it does help people. Since the introduction of the Electric Benefit Transfer Card, which is what EBT stands for, which is essentially a debit card to purchase food, fraud within the program has reached unprecedented lows. Because there's certain things you just can't buy with it. And there's certain places you just can't use it. Again, I know everybody's got a story about, they saw somebody using their EBT card at Disneyland to buy cotton candy or something, but I'm very skeptical when I hear those stories. My BS meter has a funny way of redlining when I hear this stuff, because I don't think they're true. According to the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, trafficking, which involves selling SNAP benefit cards for cash, has gone from 3.8 cents per dollar to 1 cent per dollar over the last 20 years. Furthermore, SNAP is an efficient federal program. Approximately 92% of federal SNAP funding goes toward those beneficiaries. Only 8% is spent on administrative costs, such as salaries, training, and nutrition education. Myth number 3, SNAP is an economic drain. Reality number 3, SNAP helps drive the local economy. According to USDA, every dollar spent on SNAP spurs every dollar spent on SNAP spurs $1.79 in economic activity. Instead of stunting the U.S. economy, SNAP helps keep up demand for farm products and food, thereby boosting growth and jobs. And that just makes logical sense if the local supermarket is going to do more business, the more people there are who actually have the means to go into that local supermarket and actually purchase food. It's just common sense. It's not, look, I'm not an economist, but there's nothing complex about this particular set of economics here. That's pretty simple. The same goes, by the way, for unemployment insurance. All these people who don't want to help unemployed people because we can't afford it, it actually helps the economy because then unemployed people can actually buy food and pay rent to their landlords, pay their mortgage to the banks, whatever. There is an economic benefit. You keep that money circulating, and sometimes in tough economic times, the government has to do that. And even many conservative, more supply side style economists will agree with that. By the way, it's not like that's just a liberal Keynesian economic theory. It's not. Many conservative economic theorists would also agree with that. So myth number 4, SNAP spending is out of control. Reality number 4, SNAP has only responded to increased need given the current economic state. This is why, by the way, when conservatives complain that our spending on food stamps has increased under the Obama administration, Newt Gingrich, I think it was Gingrich, who kept calling Obama the food stamp president. Well, yeah, because in tough economic times, more people are using these social programs so they don't starve to death. Since the number of SNAP beneficiaries is at a historic high, critics have called President Obama the food stamp president. In reality, these high enrollment numbers merely reflect the counter-cyclical nature of the SNAP program. The program acts as a safety net, allowing anyone who is eligible to enroll. Because of the economic recession, more Americans are eligible for SNAP and, as a result, have become SNAP beneficiaries. Again, the economics here aren't complicated. If I can understand them, it's not complicated. I'm not even good at math, okay? And I get this. When the economy recovers, the number of SNAP beneficiaries should drop, and there is already some evidence suggesting that is the case. Okay? And finally, myth number 5, SNAP recipients use federal money to... I referred to this earlier. SNAP recipients use federal money to enjoy lavish restaurant meals of caviar and champagne. Reality number 5, SNAP funding is primarily used to buy food, ranging from produce to prepackaged items at authorized retail stores. A handful of states operate a SNAP restaurant meal program, which allows the elderly, homeless, and disabled to purchase ready-to-eat food at restaurants. And yes, SNAP benefits also allow mothers to buy baby formula. Oh, can't have that. But SNAP does not cover other household items such as soaps, paper products, pet foods, alcohol, or cigarettes. In dispelling the many mischaracterizations surrounding SNAP, Americans must realize the countless benefits provided by the program and urge our members of Congress to protect SNAP funding. SNAP has assisted struggling Americans since 1961 to provide vulnerable Americans with the most basic of need, food. As concerned and compassionate Americans, we have to make these safety net programs. We have to make sure these safety net programs are protected. So that's how it really works. I get very upset, as you may have noticed, with just the sort of blanket demonization that goes on. And again, I understand for conservatives, it sort of pays off politically, but it turns off a lot of people as well. So we'll go on to the next issue because we do have a little bit of time left. We're almost out of show. I got to pick something that's not going to take long here. I thought this was interesting. We'll go with this. I have a similar, by the way, a similar rant to share regarding illegal immigration. I'm not going to talk about this now because we're almost out of time, but illegal immigration is another big issue that I'm passionate about, where just the information that's put out there, the mythology that's put out there to demonize, I don't call them illegal immigrants because there's no such thing as an illegal human being, and I think it's demeaning. I call them undocumented workers. But it's not only demeaning, but I think this is another area where they've made a political calculation that it's better to call them illegal because not only do I find it demeaning, but I think for a lot of people subconsciously who don't necessarily find it demeaning, it does have a sort of a subconscious, almost a subliminal sort of dehumanizing effect. And when you begin to think of these people as not being human, it's easier to then not have any compassion or empathy and just say, oh, we need to round them up and send them home or whatever. But I'm going to discuss that. I'm going to save that because that's a big topic for tomorrow night's radio edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, because that is the other version of this show every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network. And you can also get that through IPM Nation as well. So I'll save that for tomorrow night for the radio show. This is something just really quick. This is from Huffington Post. This is actually also from a couple weeks ago, but I just have to share it. It's one of those things that's both hilarious and infuriating at the same time. Shady Ashtari, I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly, writes this. Mississippi sex ed curriculum teaches students that homosexuality is illegal. And again, remember, it is Mississippi. It's the Deep South. Or as Dennis Miller once said in one of his comedy albums, there's nothing deep about these people. Under Mississippi's mandated sex education curriculum, teachers are required to instruct students that homosexual activity under the unnatural intercourse statute is illegal, and that a, quote, monogamous relationship in the context of marriage is the only appropriate setting for sexual intercourse, unquote. This is in public schools, by the way, in Mississippi. Since 2012, Mississippi has required all school districts to offer an abstinence-centered sex ed curriculum, although 12% of districts have not yet implemented any sex ed courses, according to a recent study by the Center for Mississippi Health Policy. The law also requires male and female students to be instructed in separate classrooms and prohibits condom demonstrations in schools. While several states maintain anti-sodomy laws, including Alabama, Louisiana, and Utah, a November 2013 public policy polling survey found that, quote, Mississippi probably continues to be the most conservative state in the country when it comes to same-sex marriage, unquote. Only 22% of Mississippi voters said they support marriage equality, with 69% thinking it should be illegal. On Thursday, Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant, a Republican, signed a contentious bill potentially legalizing anti-LGBT discrimination throughout the state under the auspices of religious freedom. Quote, it's the first time in my life that I've actually considered moving out of Mississippi, says Jeff White, a founder of the Mississippi Gulf Coast Lesbian and Gay Community Center. He went on to say, it makes me physically ill the past few days realizing what they're trying to do, unquote. So that's in the state of Mississippi, teaching children that it's illegal to be gay. Of course, thinking of that, some other interesting Southern stories. I've talked about this on the show. Under the direction of Republican Bobby Jindal in Louisiana, they're teaching, again, in public school that the Loch Ness Monster is real. This isn't from The Onion, by the way. This is a real thing. That the Loch Ness Monster is real and is actually a leftover dinosaur, thus proving that dinosaurs and humans can coexist, thus somehow proving creationism. Yeah. No, I didn't make that up. And no, like I said, that's not from The Onion or some other satirical website or publication. That's a real story. And of course, there's Texas, who teaches that they have their abstinence-only education in the state of Texas, which Governor Rick Perry is very proud of. Texas, by the way, also has the highest teen pregnancy rate in the country. So, boy, those southern states are sure doing something wrong. All right, my friends, that's it for this week's television edition of Unleashed. By the way, if you're watching live on Wednesday, I just want to remind you, I got a big event coming up this weekend. Once again, you can find out more. Go to ipmnation.com/events, and I hope you'll join me in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Don't forget the radio edition of Unleashed, Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network. Don't forget, too, you can find out all the replay times for the television edition of Unleashed and the radio edition of Unleashed if you go to ipmnation.com/MC Unleashed. And of course, if you're watching us live on Wednesday, I will be back at 4 o'clock with Norm and at 6 o'clock with Gary. And I know on Norm and Friends, our guest will be Patty Pingree from the Healing Tree Wellness Center and Spa. And I have no idea what Gary has planned for us at 6 p.m. on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, but so we'll find out together. It'll be a shared adventure. So that's it for now. I'll talk at y'all again later. Thanks, everybody.